There's a bit of... Is that you or me? We're live. This is Asia Tech Podcast, live on Thursday, broadcasting live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, probably a few other live streaming platforms as well. We're here in the studio in Singapore. This is Asia Tech Podcast Live, coming at you live at Thursday lunchtime in Singapore. We got the crew here in the studio running things. My name's Graham Brown, joined by
Hi everyone.
Colleague.
I'm Yijing Fly. Nice to meet you all again.
So Yijing's going to be monitoring the comment stream.
Yep.
So whether you are on LinkedIn or you are on Twitter, because it's going out on Periscope as well, or you are on YouTube or Twitch, if you comment Yijing's going to get everything. So she's going to respond to your comments. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on some of the stories that we're going to share today. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence in Asia and human communication. Joined here by Magic Mike in the studio, off camera, Bharat,
Ooh.
running things. He won't be saying a lot today. He's just making sure everything's running smoothly. So we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and Asia.
Absolutely.
We're going to put it all together. So maybe if you allow me to just kind of set the scene about artificial intelligence, because it's been around a long time, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and why would you know?
Well, because I've been around a long time. And the story is that I graduated with artificial intelligence degree in 1995, which was before you were born, right?
No, I was 1 year old at the time.
Okay. So at that time, I was graduating in artificial intelligence, which back at the time was a little bit more philosophical than what it is today. But I'd graduated with an AI degree and I went into the careers library at my university, which is a good university for artificial intelligence, by the way. And I went in there, so they should have known better. And I went in and spoke to the careers advisor and I said, I graduated with a degree in AI, help me get a job. And she looked at me and said, well, what is artificial intelligence? And I sort of fumbled this explanation about what I was studying at the time. I was doing genetic algorithms, computational psychology, and cognitive sciences. And she kind of just looked at me like she didn't have a clue what was going on. And fair enough, her eyes were glazing over. She just pulled out this ring binder of these available jobs and she put it down in front of me and pointed at it. I said, that's the job that you want. And it said right there in front of me, teach English in Japan. So that's how I made it to Asia. That's the Asia part of the story. I did actually take the job. And she said, go and do it. It's a passport to the future. Because Japan back then was a big deal, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So, I wanted to get out and see the world. But like when you think about it now, when we're talking about human communication, podcasting and artificial intelligence, they sound like they're two different things. But hopefully what comes out today is they're two of the same in a way. Here are two trends which are interlinked, which do not appear to be linked in any particular way. But, my thesis, my hypothesis for today, and anybody watching, love to hear your thoughts on this, and hopefully we can share some stories about this, is that the more we push into the world of AI and automation, the more we will yearn for human connection.
Absolutely.
Real, authentic.
Yeah. And we're also going to talk a bit about, the future of work and because all this talk about AI and automation, a lot of people are afraid that it's going to take away our jobs.
Yeah.
But so what does that mean, right? And does it really take away our jobs? Is it really that smart? Can it just be human being?
Yeah. Well, what does it mean? Like, I think the key part to that is like, what does it mean to be a human?
Exactly.
In work, in education, in life generally, right? So we got some great stories to share about that. And maybe we can start like, if you visit Singapore, and anybody watching on the live stream will maybe have seen this if they've come through Changi Airport. If you come through Changi Airport, I don't know which terminal it is, but if you go into the parking bay, there is a robot parking warden, like a ticket warden, monitoring. So you've got this Cisco robot that's just plying up and down the parking bays, and it says quite clearly on it that it's a parking robot, and it's just monitoring taxis, it's monitoring traffic and making sure people don't park. So it's just got, really, at the end of the day, it's a webcam on one of those, like those
movable
those vacuum cleaners that you got in your house.
I was going
right?
to say like smart trash can, but
right. It's kind of what it is, right? And it's interesting, like, because when I shared that on my LinkedIn feed, a lot of people commented on it.
What did they say?
Well, I think, it's kind of one of those things. You see a robot doing the job of a human in what appears to be, I don't know, maybe some people are a little bit threatened by it. Because like they might think, well, if this robot can do this job of this parking warden, what else can it do? So you get these kind of different reactions. The one reaction is just like, the robots are taking our jobs. And then the second reaction is you see kids like running around, like waving at this thing, right? And they're like trying to take selfies with it, the family, the mom and stuff like that. And you've got these very different reactions. One which is like this humanizing of the robot, this anthropomorphizing of the robot.
Absolutely.
And then you also have, on the other hand, this fear.
Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, I suppose, like, if that job can be done by a robot, why are we giving it to human beings? Like, what is that as a career for somebody, just to do something that a robot can do at the end of the day?
Yeah. I mean, essentially why we're even thinking about automating things or making all these robots is so that as human beings we can achieve our potential of like higher quality work and even for ourselves, right? Like what can we achieve? If we just work like a robot, then as you say, then that job I'm sure is not fulfilling for the person doing it as well. Yeah.
We're going to talk about workflow.
Absolutely.
Work, flow. Less work, more flow. We'll get to that in a minute, right?
Yeah, so just reading off a comment by Duncan W. Craig. Hi, Duncan. Thanks for your comment.
Duncan. Yeah. How's it going? Where did he comment on LinkedIn?
From LinkedIn, yeah.
Okay, hey, Dunk.
So you just
I don't know the guy.
Do you know
I just thought, I feel like I know him already because we're connected on LinkedIn. So thanks for commenting.
Thanks for commenting.
Ejing's reading out the comments today. What
Absolutely.
you got?
Okay, so Duncan says, what do you think about the AI report that came out this week and said white-collar workers were most at risk from losing their jobs?
Yeah, great. That is a really good point. It actually might be the white-collar workers. So maybe we can talk about that as well. Have we got any more comments as well that we can read out, or we're going to go straight into this part?
We can go straight into it.
Okay, so let's talk about white-collar workers. Let's talk about creativity and doctors as well, which are the most white-collar of all workers, right? The highest paid professionals of our generation. So if we were to look at automation, machines, and white-collar work, then we need to understand history. We need to understand when was the last time we had an industrial revolution and what happened. So the last industrial revolution happened 17th and 18th century in Europe. And England obviously was like the heart of that industrial revolution. Manchester, Birmingham, all these places, these industrial heart, of the ground zero of the industrial revolution with the cotton mills and the factories and all that stuff. The Black Country, as it was called. So if you look at what happened, if you were a white-collar worker of your era back then, so now we think of doctors and we think of MBAs, but obviously they weren't around back then. The equivalents were the high-paid professionals. So the equivalent of a high-paid professional back in that era was an artisan.
Absolutely. A craftsman, right?
A craftsman.
A
master craftsman handed generation to generation from father to son to father to son. And these would have been the weavers. The basket weavers were like one of the highest paid professionals of their generation. They were the white-collar workers. And if you look at their lifestyle, if you were a white-collar worker back in that era, you could have worked 3 days a week. You could have supported a family. You could have had land, right? You were not born into any kind of privilege. So you weren't born as a priest or landed gentry. You were just a normal person who happened to skill up and have this good job. And yet what happened was the machines came along, and the machines were the mechanical looms.
Yep.
Right? And a whole generation of white-collar workers were decimated. So those guys that were high paid were now reduced to menial factory work. And that era bred the Luddites. You know that, I don't know if you're familiar with the word, the Luddite. If somebody's like not like on with technology, let's say they still have like an old phone, you call
like
them
a flip phone. Does that even work anymore?
Like a clamshell phone. Maybe they'll come back in fashion.
Oh, they have Motorola new flip.
Motorola's still hanging in there, right? Motorola have been trying this for years, right? That word, the Luddite. So somebody's a Luddite. It actually comes from, I don't think it's either somebody's name or a place in England
Okay.
where a group of artisans stormed a factory and smashed it with like their flails and their like agricultural tools, right? They smashed the machines because they saw the machines like we see the parking robot today. They see it as a threat, right? And so people have that kind of reaction is like, right, AI is coming. It's going to replace my work, and it will replace your work, and it will replace the work of the high value people as much as anybody else.
Yep.
And yet, here's the interesting part, Yijing, is what happened in that shift was it wasn't just people got their livelihoods decimated. Yes, that happened. But it wasn't, it wasn't just complete destruction of value. It was the transfer of value. So the transfer of value happened so if you were creating materials and textiles and cloths in these factories, somebody was buying them, right? And it was these bourgeoisie, so this sort of new middle class in the cities, the madames, right? And they were buying tablecloths and these printed patterns, right? And the tablecloth in 17th and 18th century England was the equivalent of the Tesla today, right? So, like, why would you buy a Tesla? When you think of a Tesla car, what do you think?
It's more for the brand, right? Like, and the innovation, and that like you're part of.
What does it say about you?
That you're part of the in group, like
you got money.
You got money, and you're like future forward, whatever that means.
Yeah, like you're future looking, and also to that you are probably got leisure time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're not driving the Tesla to go to work every day. You're driving it for fun, which is like a thing now, right? Not for commuting. So the tablecloth back in 18th century England was the same, right? Because let's say you were a madame and you're buying a tablecloth. What did it say about you? It said like
I have time to host my friends for
tea.
Exactly.
For tea, right?
Yep.
Wow, like Yijing has a tablecloth. That means like there's a whole now generation of people who have time. Like before that, you were just tilling the land, or like working the soil, right, or doing really menial work. But now you have time, and you have leisure time and money, and you want to show up, and you've got space. Absolutely. That you have a home to entertain. People didn't entertain in those days, right? They went out, or they didn't entertain at all, right? You didn't go to somebody's house for tea. That didn't exist, right? Only the landed gentry, the nobles did that. But now there's this new generation that could do what kings and queens could do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And have like little cheap artworks around
like
to showcase.
China, bone china tea, like teapot. That became a status symbol. But that had to be made. Wedgwood china, right? Wedgwood was one of the first marketers ever. Like he's, if you listen to Seth Godin talk about pottery, like Wedgwood created brand, was one of the first real brands, because it was just like he told the story of bone china pottery, because now you're not just buying a cup.
Yeah.
You're buying, ooh, that's a nice cup, right? That you're pouring. And I just learned something really interesting. It's really bizarre, right? There's this whole tradition about pouring milk into tea and tea into milk, right? Like what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
And where that came from, I don't really pay attention. I just put it all in together. But there used to be a protocol, right? If you pour tea into milk or milk into tea. And the reason was, right, that if you had cheap bone china, right, if you poured hot tea into it, it would break.
Oh.
So what they always used to do is put the milk in first and then they pour tea into it, right? So if you had cheap china, you would pour the tea into the milk.
Oh,
however, if you had expensive china, you could pour the tea in straight away and show off. Look, it doesn't break, right? So it became a story. Like, I'm going to serve you tea.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so I'm going to serve you tea, right? And it's, oh, look, you're not putting milk in first. This must be good china. So the point was just like this whole industry was created. And this industry was called retail.
Yep.
Right? So let's say, Yijing, you went shopping and you're like, I'm going to go and buy a tablecloth now with some bone china because I've got, the in-laws coming over. You went into a store to buy something and you needed to be sold the story. You weren't just going, right, I'm going to buy that tablecloth and that bone china set, right? You needed like somebody to say, and what would Madame be looking for? And what would be the purpose of this? And like, do you entertain a lot? What kind of tea parties do you do? Do you serve cake, tea, scones? So you needed to tell that story. And that was the storytelling part. So Duncan's point about white collar workers, really the arc of that story is basically, white collar workers got decimated. But at the same time, they were created. There was a transfer of value, and I think we're going to see the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if we know that computers are way better at crunching data than us, and if you want to be smarter than a computer, by smarter we mean that, just from knowing all these things, knowledge, right? So obviously a computer can process all this knowledge and look for patterns much faster than us.
Yeah.
So if that's what the bulk of your job is, then I guess, likely you're going to be...
You can't compete against a machine.
No.
Right? There's no way you can win.
Yeah.
So we got a few stories we want to share about that, which are really, this whole sort of arc about the destruction of white collar work because of machines. And really it's that transfer of value. It's happened before. It's a transfer from spreadsheets, so all that number crunching, to storytellers. And it's happening again. So if you think, what's a spreadsheet type job? It's not just filling in spreadsheets. It could be analysing lots and lots of patterns. And a great example of that is a doctor.
Yep.
These are high-paid white-collar workers who effectively, a lot of their work is looking at patterns, right? So if you think, for example, if you go to a doctor for a scan, and then look at that scan, the doctor is really just looking at thousands and thousands of cases that look like that.
Right.
Again, it's like a lawyer. Right? It's just pattern recognition.
Yes. What has happened before, and therefore what is the most likely to happen now, right?
Yeah, and that's all kind of stored in your that sort of intangible part of what they do, which is just their experience, right? Which is really just patterns, right?
Yeah.
They say about like photographers, like taking a good photo, and they ask a photographer, how did you do that? How did you get that story? Like you were sitting there and you were talking to someone and captured that moment. Often they don't know, but what they say, like chess, is they've just seen thousands and thousands of patterns, right? They don't actually think, like, when they talk to people like Gary Kasparov, who's big on AI, by the way, he's like a world chess champion grandmaster from years back. He was the first one to get beaten by
AlphaGo?
Deep Blue. No. We'll talk about AlphaGo in a minute. Okay. Beaten by AlphaGo. Sorry, Deep Blue, IBM. He's basically said, like, chess is just thousands and thousands of patterns. He's seen, like, constant these permutations of chess patterns. So I know if you move your rook there or your knight there, I've seen it before thousands of times. And so I know what the potential outcomes are. Same with doctors, same with lawyers, right? And that really is what constitutes experience. It's just patterns. And yet, now what's happening is that we're finding that machines can do that better now. Yeah. So what does it mean for like 20, 25, 30 years of experience? Now a machine can do that in half the time and doesn't take any holiday. It doesn't need paying, like, or pension scheme or anything like that, right?
Oh, cry.
Yeah, I know. There's just like, well, what do you do? Do you give up? So there's a good example of that, which is the case of Neuromind. So Neuromind is an AI-driven neuroimaging platform, software, right? And what they did, it's Chinese. So they basically challenged, I think it's Chinese, it's Asian at least. Neuromind challenged doctors in this
duel.
Yeah. This is media loves this. It's like AI versus man versus machine, and doctors. Wow, these really super smart doctors. Yeah. And these are like oncologists, right? So they're
God, they're like cream of the crop human race, right?
Yeah, like brain scientists, right? Against a machine, and it was like a 6-hour duel marathon. And they basically showed doctors scans, real scans, and they said, right, diagnose it. Is that cancer or not? And these doctors had to like work in teams against a machine, right? And everybody was saying until that point that you can't automate experience because, like, doctors, they have this sort of instinct, this intuition, which you can't quantify, right? Like, 80% of it we can kind of work out, but then 20% is this kind of intuition thing, this creative thing. And it's the same, like maybe they say about lawyers, right? Or
Mhm.
playing chess. It's that, there's that kind of human brilliance which you cannot quantify. So you cannot beat a doctor.
And
yet,
what happened?
So what happened was they did this duel, neuromind versus doctors, and AI won. So
Oh.
it did. So if you look at the rates, I don't have the data, but I'm just paraphrasing the data here, right? So it was doctors were 60% successful and made the diagnosis in 30 minutes. And AI was 80% successful and made the diagnosis in 17 minutes. So it was more successful in half the time. And here's the thing, AI is getting better.
Absolutely.
And doctors are, incremental, right? AI is getting better exponentially. So what does that mean? Then, your crying gesture.
Yeah.
It's like if you're an artisan or a doctor or a lawyer or a chess player, what hope is there for mankind?
I mean, yeah. Wait, before I share my story, because you're talking about doctors and it just reminded me of a recent experience I had. But before that, let's do like a shout out to
shout out
some
to
of our
fans in the audience. Hey, folks.
Okay, so here's from Igor. This is your friend.
Yeah.
Yep, Igor
Hello,
says
Igor.
hey, and he says check out studium.io for AI education.
Oh, that's a plug.
Oops.
Yeah.
Beep. Okay.
Well, the people normally pay for that kind of advertising, Igor. So anyway, we'll let that one roll.
Oops.
No worries.
Okay.
All good fun.
And
helping each other here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who else has said hi?
So Karthik Manan says, way to go, Graham.
Hey, Karthik. How's it going, man? Thanks for turning up on the live stream.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys. Please
we're talking about AI and being human. All right. Any more comments? Keep them coming. Please share your stories and your thoughts about some of the stories that we share. Being human in the era of the machine. It's not easy,
It's not. I mean, especially with doctors, getting beat by machines. So, I really wanted to share this experience that I had recently going to the doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was one of the government clinics, right? So it's cheaper and many more people go there as compared to private doctors. So I took a number, I went in, I saw the doctor for literally about 5 minutes. I was just thinking, like, you would imagine that as a doctor, like providing service, expertise, that as a human being, you would think they care more about you, but they're just like, okay, I think it's this, bye.
Yeah.
It's just running through. They probably see 100 people a day, and I was just thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of understand why he's doing this. He's probably seen like some millions of people, and he's just trying to do his job. And if a doctor as a human being is acting like that, then it's not that much different if I go see a machine, right? If the machine can diagnose it faster, and the reason that these doctors are not being able to empathize with people and to, actually care for people is because they're taking so much time just to go through all these things.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, on the machines can diagnose this faster, more accurately, then honestly, they are taking over the job of the doctors. But what I'm trying to say is that maybe it frees up more time for doctors to actually care for people. And that's something that a machine, as of now, cannot replicate. We still want to talk to a human being.
Yeah.
Right.
We still want care.
Exactly. We want care.
You can't replace a nurse, right? You can't replace somebody who holds your hand and says, "Are you okay?" You can't replace that, right? But that's what we want. And it's a really interesting point, right? That you raise a point that so many of these professionals, white-collar workers, go into their craft, their profession, wanting to do all that.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm sure if you talk to every single doctor, that's why they signed up. If you talk to every single lawyer, that's why they signed up. They signed up to do that. They take the Hippocratic Oath for a reason. Like, I'm here to serve and to help humanity. And I'm sure they believe in that.
Absolutely.
However, we get these conversations like HR people, like people whose role has become, or even communications people who's become a gatekeeper in an organization because all their work gets in the way of already what they signed up to do, right?
Yep.
HR people did not sign up simply to manage risk in the organization. They signed up to,
develop the human potential.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Like, sort of like realize human potential of their people, right? That's what they signed up for, but work got in the way.
Yeah, we're all boggled down by admin.
Yeah.
And of course, as with the example we've just discussed, that even if it's high level admin, it can be taken over by the robots. And the thing is, if that's the case, then why not? It just means that we have more time and space to do what we as human beings should be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which raises a really good point, which is, why are we doing this, right? Not this podcast. We're doing this podcast to share with you guys. And hello, everybody. This is Asia Tech Podcast live every Thursday. Myself, Graham Brown, and
Yijing Fly.
Yijing, who is managing and moderating and reading out your comments. So keep them coming. Why do we automate in the first place? What's the point? And it reminds me of, there's a Winston Churchill anecdote. It's apocryphal, so I don't know how true it is. And I'm saying this because Anne said, thank you very much for the historical perspective. So I'm going to lay some more on you. More history. Put it into context, right? Thanks, Anne. Winston Churchill, hopefully you guys know who Winston Churchill is, so we're not starting from zero here. Apparently, I don't know if this is true, so somebody can correct me. Apparently, he was approached and somebody said to him, some like civil servant, bigwig, some work guy whose work was all about work, not flow, said to Winston Churchill, look, we've got to reduce funding to the arts to fuel the war effort. And apparently, Churchill turned around and said, then what are we fighting for? Now, I don't know if that's true. It's apocryphal, like a lot of these anecdotes. It could have been Mark Twain. You know, he gets credited with a lot of stuff he never said, right? But the point being is that, why are we automating? What are we automating for? Like, is it a race to the bottom with the machine to see who can recognize the most patterns or like count the most beans? Or is there a purpose? And I think we've got to, I mean, the purpose of having this conversation is that we've got to understand what that purpose is. Otherwise, it will just be man versus machine.
Absolutely.
Yet this conversation is like, if we can automate all that work, we can flow. Less work, more flow.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think the doctors should be happy. They're like, yay, all these really smart algorithms coming on, saving our time. And then, you know, the algorithms can diagnose and we can actually talk to the patient and care about them. And in fact, Anne commented again, say, wouldn't it be amazing if there was more time for medics to care for their patients?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, how many medics would say no? Very few. I'm sure it's like teachers, isn't it? There must be a few bad ones. You think, like, why are you doing this? They're always like complaining. But like teachers, doctors, lawyers, HR people, everything, I'm sure what they really care about is the human contact.
Absolutely.
Somebody told me the other day something interesting about how healthcare will go is that if, for example, AI revolutionizes healthcare, let's say neuromind becomes a thing and doctors are using it and that sort of high-paid white-collar work becomes machines, right? And then what will then happen is that will force a lot of doctors into the equivalents of the factories back in the Industrial Revolution, right? Into the lower-paid work, lower-paid medical work, whatever that is, maybe like sitting behind a computer, diagnosing or like dealing with whatever it is. But the work that we cannot outsource is the frontline work. And it's interesting, like, I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure most doctors are men, right? And I'm sure
nurses are,
most frontline people are women, right? You know, how many Filipino nurses are there? Women, right? That's like 80% of these people are women, it seems, right? And that seems to be the top of the female career path in medicine, right? Unfortunately. But those are the guys who are going to add the most value.
Yeah.
So the whole thing might just flip on its head.
You know what? That just gave me the idea that, you know, all this talk about gender wage difference, all that.
Right.
You know, if care was considered to be more valuable, maybe we'll see that gender wage gap diminishing. Who knows?
Could it?
I don't know.
Well, especially if it takes that sort of that strata of white collar work and just decimates it like those artisans.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, we don't really value a lot of this care. Like, you know, a homemaker, you can't really put a value to it and say, you're not making money, like your husband's making more. But that amount of care, if you think about hiring someone to be a maid or to take care of your sick parents, that's a lot of money.
And there's going to be a lot more of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at the demographics in Asia, right?
Yeah. And like, do you want a human being to take care of your kid and your parents, or do you want a robot?
Well, there's a lot of solutions out there which are trying to do that, and a lot are coming from Japan, and maybe we can talk a little bit about Japan as well, because it's got a real demographic time bomb waiting to explode. If you look Japan, I mean, we've both spent time in Japan. I spent some time out of Fukuoka, which is a great city, by the way, and it's the startup city of Japan. It's the official startup city in a very Japanese way. This is where all the startups are going to happen. You go to Fukuoka, and unlike Tokyo, there isn't any kind of outside of Tokyo. Pretty much the demographic trend is down everywhere. Right? All cities are losing people, so it's just aging. There's no immigration. It's just aging populations. You go to Fukuoka, and I went to the startup city, I think it's called, or Startup Next in Fukuoka, which is like a hub for startups. Great, all these like startups just flourishing in Fukuoka, and you see this space that's been made for them. And I went up to the top of this Startup Next building, and this is kind of an interesting building. What is it? And I was looking around it, and I looked out the window, and there's like an old disused swimming pool which was grown over, and I thought, what was this place? And I went downstairs, and at the entrance, in Japan they call it the genkan, which is like that, you know, if you go to a Japanese house or a school, you've got like a space where you go in, and they had
to change your shoes, right?
Yeah, they had these cubby holes, these pigeonholes, like you know, like my son went to a Japanese school, a primary school. It's all these cubby holes where you go in, you take off your shoes, you put on your slippers, and there were, you know, there must have been like 200 of them, and it was empty because this used to be a school. And it was like, for me, that was really indicative. It told a huge story, which was that great startups, but where are the kids? There's no kids. They're disappearing. Like this used to have this. You could imagine like 20 years ago, the noise of all the energy of the kids running around and all that sort of chaos and that sort of positivity and kids crying and like, you know, just that happiness that you get with all those kind of kids running around. And then it was empty. And I thought, wow, like that's like a huge demographic problem for Japan. And they're trying to solve it. And, you know, whereas some countries, like here in Singapore, aging population, but they have immigration. In Japan, it's robots. We'll solve it with robots.
It's interesting though. I wonder if it's also because in Japan they're still quite closed off. You know, most people still speak Japanese. So whereas in Singapore, because we speak English, so it's easier for immigrants to come. And then whereas in Japan, you have to know the language, or it's difficult to work in Japan. And I guess Japan always had this fascination with robots, actually.
Yeah. Even in anime, Robot Cat, Doraemon.
Yeah, Doraemon is a robot. I forgot.
Cat, half cat, half robot. How about that? What a hybrid.
Yeah.
Why don't you just have a cat?
Because the cat is not futuristic enough.
A cat, it travels through time and space.
Yeah. Wow.
Robots in Japan. Let's talk about those. Now, a lot of it is employed in care.
Yeah.
So there's like, there are robots employed, for example, for rehabilitation, which are not really robots. They're you know, there's like a company which manufactures these exoskeletons.
Okay.
Aerodyne, which is basically snaps on to your outside and just powers you up, like a bit like Tony Stark.
Oh, wow.
Iron Man suit, right?
That actually sounds really cool.
It gives you, and I've seen people lifting boxes with these things, right? Because it just gives you like strength. Okay, there's this thing that sits on your outside. Then they've got robots for care, which is basically lots of old people in Japan, not enough people to care for them. What do? So they're trying to make these robots which will care for people, you know, like the classics, serving tea, or just like there's one that looks like a seal. Like a seal pup, and it sits there just going like purring like seals are supposed to do. I thought it's cats, right?
But this is quite funny. Like, are there also not enough animals to go around?
Exactly. We've got a problem with animals as well. Maybe they're dying out.
Actually, you know what? This just reminds me. I met a person on a trip recently that. So basically, she used to work. She was a humanitarian aid worker, and she was at all the big conflict zones, the earthquakes in the past like 10, 20 years. She was there front line. And now she has PTSD. Right. So it's clinically diagnosed
Right.
PTSD, and she had to wait over a year to finally get her service dog. So she's saying that it's tough, man, that all these animals, like
You got to train them.
yeah, they're great, but you got to train them,
Yeah.
and even then you have to get a good match.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe robots is just easier to manage in that sense, but
I don't know.
yeah, but
But
also
there's a lot of studies done about this, right? Which is that whilst a robot can behave like a living being,
yeah,
right? There is something which we are hardwired for, which cannot be replicated, which is, there's a hormone in the human brain called oxytocin, which is basically generated when mothers give birth. And basically it's like the bonding hormone, right? So it's why a baby will then like bond to the mother straight away, and the mother to the baby. It's like, we're hardwired for this.
Is that a love hormone?
Yeah, it's called the love hormone, right?
That's interesting.
Oxytocin. And, like a lot of our behavior is driven by hormones. Oxytocin is one for like bonding. And then we have mirror neurons in our head, which like reward us for, sort of mirroring behavior, mimicking behavior. So like, if you watch kids, they're watching parents, they'll copy parents unknowingly because they've got these mirror neurons, right, in their head, which basically says, look, if you copy what an adult does, then, you get rewarded. And I've seen this, like I've been like walking around the house swearing, and then my son's like going like that. Like, where did you get that from? It's from me, right?
Yep.
They're just going to learn it. I mean, he's 13 now, so he gets his own stuff. But like back then when he was like 3 or 4, they pick up these words, right? So the point is that, we are hardwired to absorb and to connect. Oxytocin, the love hormone, being one, right? And they've done these studies where they've like tested mothers and daughters, and they've tested them in like 2 control situations. And one was like they had the mother and the daughter text message each other, right? And then they measured the oxytocin levels, right? So for example, if you were stressed and then you text the mom and the mom texts you back, they measured your oxytocin levels, right? And this might have been cortisone or something like that. But anyway, another sort of stress hormone in the brain. And then they tested them when they were actually sitting together next to each other, and they found that when they were actually in the same room next to each other, the stress, it would be cortisone if it's a stress hormone, was significantly reduced. So what they basically found, that despite having technology, and despite having technology to give you connection to people, I can connect with anybody at any time, nothing could replace the skinship, the physical contact of sitting next to somebody, or like a warm human being, right?
Yeah.
And even if you can create a robot that mimics all that behavior, somehow we know it's not real. Maybe you can kind of fake it, but we know that it's not a human being and it doesn't have a beating heart, and therefore we don't connect with it.
So speaking of that, I want to share some interesting stories about robots that...
Yeah, let's do robots.
Yeah, no, the thing is, right, we think it's fake, but it's like, what is this quality about reality? Like, what is it about the human that we associate with as having real emotions?
Yeah.
Like, that's why there are all these robots, especially in the whole area of care, that they want to put this, they want to humanize it, and they want people to feel like these robots have emotions or behave in a human way. So, for instance, I was looking at, there's this robot called Seer, S-E-E-R. It's considered the most expressive robot on Earth. And it's really interesting. It's really tiny, about, probably the size of your hand, I think. It's basically a face. It's created by a Japanese artist. So it's interesting, like, an artist, but not really like just Boston Dynamics or something.
Yeah.
So an artist makes this robot. And honestly, I think it's more a work of art, which is what we connect with humanly on an emotional level, than it is a robot. So what it does is, it's a human head, and it looks a little bit more like an anime character, like with the slightly big eyes. And what it can do is, the eyebrows can move, and then the head can move. And it can also mirror your expressions. So when you look at it and you're interacting with it, what it looks like is a very curious kid
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
So the eyebrows move, the head move, and it has this whole multitude of expressions and emotions that's being translated through that moving head. As compared to, Sophia the robot, that's supposed to be like really smart, but honestly it's just creepy.
I just hate these kind of like
me too. I don't
robotic,
understand.
like they're trying to be human, but they're
Exactly.
being robots. Why don't they just kind of do
Yeah.
what we're used to interacting with?
Exactly.
Trying to like be smart. Why don't you just do? I mean, it's trying to be logical rather than emotional, I feel.
Absolutely. So the logical aspect comes from that. Well, if it looks like a human being, the more it looks like a human being, for sure, the
Yeah.
more we'll be able to connect with it. But that's not true. The truth is we connect with the emotions. So even for this Seer robot, it looks less realistic than Sophia and all those other robots. It doesn't have skin like we do, but it connects with you on a
Why
deeper
do they
level.
make it look like a kid?
Well, I think it's to feel that it's harmless, That's
Ah.
pretty. I do feel it's pretty important.
Yeah.
I mean, have you thought about why all these humanoid robots are all female? Like, why don't they make a male one?
They'd be scary. They're male.
Even
'Cause I think of,
scarier,
like,
maybe.
RoboCop. Yeah.
Possibly.
Because I suppose they're trying to breach that sort of problem that we may have, that this may master us at some point.
Yeah.
But it's
Possibly.
interesting that the kid part is like, if you look at anime, for example, like in Japan, a lot of these characters like Hello Kitty, Kitty-chan, they don't have mouths, right? Or they have like tiny mouths. And people say like the reason they do that is to make them harmless.
You know what's really interesting? I just read, actually it's a meme, but it was like I think someone from Sanrio explaining what Hello Kitty means. So apparently it doesn't have a mouth because what it's trying to say is that actions speak louder than words.
Okay. Is that a bit of post-rationalization?
Perhaps. And
Right.
guess what? The ribbon is supposed to represent human connections. I was like, okay.
That's a bit too much. I don't
Of
get
course.
that.
No, me neither. But the point being, like, what are these things that they think are valuable that they want to put on this
Yeah.
cat, right?
Is it in a way like with anime and robots as well, is that because, like, let's go back to that point, which is really interesting, that if they look like human beings, they're humans, right? But they're not, and therefore we don't like it.
Yeah.
But if they have this like childlike quality, or they don't have a mouth like in anime, we start writing emotions into it
Yep.
in the same way that stories or art is not telling you exactly what it is. If art just
Yeah.
said, look, this is a picture of like families sitting on the bank of the Seine in Paris, right? It's like, well, I'm not interested. But if it's like, here's some stories and it's a little bit impressionistic, we can kind of like write that in ourselves, and therefore we feel these kind of emotions like it's got a small mouth, and therefore maybe I have to do the talking for it. So we feel this kind of connection with it.
Absolutely. I think if the thing in itself already has, if it's already full, then what more can you add to it, right? So these robots that look more like robots but has the human quality is actually more enticing to us in
Yeah.
that, it's
There's
like,
going to be like a job, isn't there? Somebody's going to be
the humanizing
the humanized chief humanization officer.
Yeah,
I
possibly.
guarantee that is going to be whatever that's called, right? Because like if I call it something now, in 5 years it's going to have some funky like title, like the humanization ninja. It's going to be something where somebody's job is to humanize robots, but not to like completely replicate I Ching's face, for example, because it would be creepy.
Yep.
Like what's not Sylvia? Hello, Sylvia. Sorry.
Seer, S-E-R, Seer.
No, not Sia.
What?
Who was the other one?
Sophia?
Sophia,
Ah,
that's
yeah.
right. So Sophia, right? Not like that. That creeps us out. It's going to be
Yeah.
like, how do I create this sort of emotional connection with this thing, right? But not try and replace what it's a mimic of, right?
So another interesting thing, I was just flipping through Instagram and I saw an ad. It was about Boston Dynamic. They make those like really creepy looking robots.
The dog.
Honestly,
They're really good.
but they're really creepy. They look
Yeah,
like war
I like
machines, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they look like war machines, and maybe they are. But the
They don't have
interesting thing,
faces.
maybe if they put some fur on it, it'll look a bit better. But the interesting thing is, they filmed this video of these robots playing soccer.
Yes.
This activity that is like really human.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't imagine a war robot needing to play soccer, right? Why would it need to play soccer? But I thought it was quite a smart PR move. It's like, yay, look, how cute robots.
But is it any good at soccer? You see those competitions. My son did one of those soccer competitions in Japan. He actually won it. like for the
With robots?
yeah, he won like the
Oh.
Kanto, you know Kanto. He
Yes.
won the Kanto region competition for the Crayfus Cup, which is like the robotic soccer cup. You have to design these
Okay,
robots
okay.
that kind of like, it's like a one-on-one. It's not like the
got it.
humanoids, right?
Got it.
So he won that, but it's pretty basic stuff, right? We've got some comments coming in. I want to just, before we dive into the comments, Yijing, let's talk about sport and robots, right? This is a really interesting area. And you think about it like autonomous cars, for example, without a doubt, in time, let's say it's in the very near future, autonomous cars are going to be safer, if not now, better drivers than human beings, to the point where insurance claims are going to be zero, right? That, you know, you not need to insure these things because they're going to be so safe, right? And we're going to look back on the era where we used to drive and think, what the hell were we doing? Like, why we used to drive that thing, right? It's crazy. Like getting water out of the well. Like, you used to do that. So that era is over, and there's this newer era of autonomous cars. So you then think about like, all right, well, if that was the case, and imagine if you had F1, Formula One, autonomous cars, they would kick ass, right? They would like kick, you know, Lewis Hamilton, all that, you know, Sebastian Vettel, they would not stand a chance. But would it be interesting? It wouldn't, right? Because like the soccer, like the Formula One, it's not the fact that they're really good that makes it engaging. It's the fact that they're human beings and they're mortal and they fail. And, you know, this AlphaGo story we'll come to in a minute is like, we identify with heroes who have very human weaknesses.
Absolutely.
You know, if
Yeah.
you think of any kind of, you're a football player, right?
Yeah. Yep, I play football.
Who's your favorite player?
Okay, so I play more than I watch, so I can't say for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
All right. So if you can imagine like the stars of any kind of soccer,
Let's say Messi. Yeah.
Messi or like Ronaldo or even like people before him, they all had like human flaws, and that made them like relatable. They either came from like dirt poor families, or you know they had like big screw ups, or they had like big issues, or whatever.
And I think it's not just the fact that you know, obviously the backstory and their flaws matter, but the fact that if they win, they're really happy, and if they lose, they cry. They have like all these human emotions, which is, you know, we look at Olympics, we look at all these athletes competing, just pushing the limits of human possibilities, right?
Right.
But we live vicariously through them, like their victories are our victories.
Yeah, and their failures make them more sweet, right?
Absolutely.
You know, that's what we relate to. We're not interested in the winning, right? We're not interested in being the best. We're interested in the journey, which is very human. It's the human narrative. So the point being is that whilst robots can do these things much, much, much better than us, it doesn't mean anything for us as human beings to connect with that, like these robotic humanoids, these cyborgs or whatever. The cyborg's different. These like Sophia, right? Or like robotic sports. It doesn't mean anything, right? And a great example of that was, if you read the book, a recommended book is AI Superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee, which is really about AI in Asia and robotics, and how China, Asia is really driving the scene at the moment. And he talks about one story which is used a lot in many books, so you'll find it in different versions. But AlphaGo is a game which is apparently more complex than chess. Like we talked about pattern recognition. Apparently it's a lot more complex. I've never played Go, right? It's
the white and black.
Yeah. I don't even know how to play this thing, right? But apparently like, the number of permutations on Go is much bigger than chess. So as a game, if you're a champion in Go, it's like you've seen like thousands and thousands of times more potentially permutations of layouts than chess is 8x8. Go, I don't know. It's like
50. I don't know. It's quite a lot.
Hundreds of these things, right? So the reason why then Go has become this, you know, this crucible of conflict or competition between man and machine is because actually it's been a lot harder to perfect a machine that plays Go than chess. Chess we did that IBM years ago, right? And Kasparov. So now it's like AlphaGo, Google versus KGA, I think his name, who's a Korean grandmaster in Go.
Mm.
And everybody thought that it's a matter of time, but just how well will the machine do against the grandmaster of Go? Because it's been like the final frontier of competition, and we haven't cracked it. The machine still can't beat human beings because they still have this sort of magic that machines can't capture. What was really interesting about the results is, well, yeah, obviously the machine won. That is natural. That's going to happen. But what was really interesting about the story was that whilst it became this big sort of PR event, a media stunt, and it started out as, look how great the machine is. Look how clever it is. It's beating the best of the best at the hardest possible game. What soon happened is the narrative changed from being about that to being about losing. And the whole media PR circus surrounded AlphaGo versus KJ changed from being about the potential of AI to the reality of being a human. And all the narrative changed because now they were focused on this guy frustrated, trying to beat the computer, KJ crying, right?
Yeah.
And that became like, people were hooked, people were into it, people were like engaged with this story because he was human and he was getting his ass kicked. And we related to that.
Yeah.
Like, it's Terminator beating the hero, right? And what then became really interesting is that we learned two things from this story. One, that machines are much better at anything that requires pattern recognition and spreadsheets. However, we also learned what it meant to be human, which is actually the story, the journey, which is what machines cannot have. A machine cannot fail. A machine cannot make mistakes. And therefore, if we want to be more human in the era of the machine, like our jobs, whether we are a doctor or a lawyer or a spreadsheet filler, whatever it is, looking at that story of AlphaGo versus KJ, we now know what the future must be for us. We cannot beat the machine at what machines are better at, pattern recognition. But we can beat them at what humans are better at. And that's being human. And that's being vulnerable and authentic and having a journey and engaging everybody in that journey as well. This sort of hero arc that we all get, that he gets beaten down by the bad guy and then he comes back and it's like, yeah. That's what we all relate to, right? We see it in every single movie. What that means for us and what it means for us in whatever discipline or industry you're in is that that's what you've got to double down on.
Yeah.
Being human.
Wow.
Should we take some comments?
Yes, absolutely. Comments.
Maybe some of the last questions that we had.
Yes. Are you on it? Okay, yeah.
Should we read this one out? Should we take Kartik's question?
Absolutely, both. Yeah, I'll read it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So Kartik says, is AI really going to impact in the medium term considering its own flaws and black box nature? Who audits the AI black box? Also, you can't use AI in recommending a flavor as it can only read what others have said about it. With the bot-based marketing play, you don't know how many of those reviews are real and how many are just some social media plug like the one that you got on AI education.
Was that a bot?
I don't know.
He's not ego. Are you a bot?
Damn.
No, I don't think so, right? Yeah, it's really interesting that this whole idea that marketing will be gamed by AI, because it's happening. You look at programmatic, which is, AI-driven buying of ad space. Right?
Yeah. There's like smart targeting. Like as long as you have the data, it's probably quite easy to.
It's getting easier.
Yeah.
It's following you everywhere.
Oh my god.
You know, if you look at something on Amazon, I looked at something like I was buying socks on Amazon, and then I'm looking at some other website, and these ads for socks are popping up. It's retargeted. It's like following me everywhere. I'm getting retargeted to buy these socks. It won't go away.
I swear my friend just mentioned a festival on WhatsApp, and then the next thing I know, I open up my Instagram and the ad pops up.
How is that possible? There you go.
Yeah, it's probably
Facebook, WhatsApp.
Yeah, exactly. All owned by Facebook,
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
It's watching us. It's monitoring us. So we know that that's going to get better and better and cleverer and cleverer.
It's going to look more and more human.
Right.
Yeah, more and more personalized.
However, you know, you think about it. We only make a certain amount of choices or recommendations, or we only accept a certain amount of things. We're not buying more and more stuff. We've still only got 24 hours in a day. I can still only spend that time with a set amount of people, and I can still only buy one meal at lunchtime. Right? That's not going to change. Like, still, you know, all my needs are still human. So that's not going to change. Therefore, all these ads are still targeting me with this noise. What's going to happen, to your point about like, recommendations and marketing, is it's basic supply and demand. Like, if the supply of algorithms is going to get bigger and bigger, then, you know, our demand for authenticity is going to get bigger and bigger, right? These are sort of these are directly related, meaning that we will make more decisions and be more acute to what's real and what's not.
If you think about, you know, we don't ever need to talk about robots. Okay, influencers. You can tell when they're doing a plug and not really putting a lot of effort into, they're just like,
This thing that I'm using.
like, this place is great. I love the food. The chef is amazing. And then, you know, just some like press release that they probably didn't even write themselves. Yeah. Why I know
it's
that?
an industry.
Yeah, like I went to a restaurant, I'm like, oh my god, this place sucks. And I look at a Google review and there were like 1-star reviews, like real people saying things, and there were 5-star reviews where I'm like, nah.
Oh, of course, it's all gamed. We know that. I mean, if you go to, there's a great tool that you can install on your browser called Review Meta. It basically, if you go on Amazon and you install this Chrome extension, it tells you, obviously it's not Amazon sanctioned, but it tells you what it thinks is fake on those reviews. It's quite scary how much of that is fake, especially when it comes to like, you know, like healthcare products.
Oh, okay.
Books about self-development, you know, the classics which you think have been gamed. And some of them, like 75%
are fake.
or more, are fake. So if we know that, what does it do for us? We know that that's fake. So think about that in the context of where we've come from. Like years ago, if you watched on TV, if you were buying soap powder, a soap powder company like Persil or Tide or whoever it may have been, they would have paid actors to act out a scene where somebody knocks on the door and says, "Hey, have you tried the new Whiter Than White Tide?" And then the housewife, as it always was back then, would say, "No, but let's try it." And then a week later, yes, my husband's shirts are now whiter than white and my life is so much more complete. And at the bottom it said, "These are paid actors." And we knew it, but we bought into it because, you know, it's supply and demand. It's like, because the supply of these gamed algorithms, like gaming our attention, gaming our trust, was very low. We thought, oh, that's cool. We know they're actors, but we'll just buy it. And now, like you're saying with like influencers, we're so acute to it. We don't trust anybody. So what that means for AI is it's gaming it more and more and more and more. So the premium on trust, how do we know it's real? So that's the point. Like, what is the stuff that AI can't do? That becomes more and more valuable. So like AI can't show up at your house and say, "Hey, look, I'm a real human being." Not yet. But AI can't do that. And AI can't be standing there in a store, a retail assistant can't game it. It's a human being.
Yeah, the human aspect of it, right? That you connect on that level. The thing is, it can be recommending all these products. Like, you get the information, perfect. We should use machines for what they're good at.
Yeah.
But this brings me to another story, which was that, so I think last year in China, you know, China's really big on all this like automation, machine, self-checkout, and it's always a hype. Like, wow, we have this new thing. So in Shenzhen, they had a lot of grocery stores that they started this new thing where a lot of grocery stores and convenience stores were unmanned, so self-checkout. And they thought, great, we cut costs on like hiring a person. But what happened was that they just became ghost towns, and they eventually all shut down because it's just a huge vending machine. Like, if I want to go to a vending machine, then I will go to a vending machine. Yeah, the fact that you're buying grocery, why do you buy from A and not B? maybe you like the person,
Right.
you have a relationship with the person who's selling the thing to you. They can recommend the thing to you. They can change how they place the products throughout the day so that you see the best things.
Right.
But all those things are gone. And if I just want to place a product, if I know what I'm gonna get, I can just buy it online.
Right. Or the
Yeah.
vending machine.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of spreadsheet
Mm.
stuff. That's the equivalent of like diagnosing patterns, right? Whereas what you can't do is replace the human part of that, which is like, hey, Jing, have you tried the new avocados? They've just come in. Like, oh, right, nice. And how's it going? Like, how's your, family and stuff like that? That kind of human touch.
Mm.
And you look at what's happened in retail as well. Like, you're absolutely right. All being automated, going online,
Yep.
all happening. Yeah. What is, if I said to you, what's one of the biggest success stories in IT in the last 10 years? Name a brand, a huge brand, global. It's just blown up.
What? IT?
Yeah, who would you say?
I don't know. Apple?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought, yeah, IT. Well,
Apple.
but the thing is, okay, to be fair, like Apple is more than IT, right? If you just say IT, I'm like,
Right, but what does Apple sell?
yeah, it does, but it has done a good job of,
Right.
more than just IT.
Exactly. Here's the point: is that 63% of Apple employees in the US work for the retail store. So if you say like 2/3, basically Apple's a retail company selling products, IT products. Think of that. That everybody's saying that this is going to get automated and go that way, and it has. Yet the biggest success story, the $1 trillion success story, like this valuation, right? The $1 trillion success story is Apple, and it's a retail company. And why? Like, you walk into Orchard here in Singapore, and somebody walks up to you, and they're wearing like a black T-shirt, and you think they're just like an Apple fan. It's not. They work there. So, hi, how's it going? What are you looking for today? Like, have you considered looking at this? Or, they're actually really good, and they train.
Yep.
Are these genius people, right? They're called genius, right? And they train them. And there's a training manual for genius. I've seen it. And in the training manual for genius, which is like the black book for retail ninjas, right? And in that, it mentions the word empathy 17 times. It's no coincidence. Empathy, empathy, empathy. That's a very human condition. That point being is that, yeah, you can automate, and automate you should do for a lot of stuff, but you cannot replace this high value flow. And those that focus on that, the rewards are all there. Everybody said music's going away, right? Everybody said music's going to disappear because of the MP3s and Napster
and streaming, but it
streaming.
didn't.
It's like big, like Spotify, Apple, iTunes.
Yeah, YouTube, a lot of music.
Music.
As well,
It's
yeah.
all music on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the biggest like YouTube content, right? And live music.
Yeah, it's not going away.
Have you been to live music at all? And
Yeah, of
you do go?
course. Yeah, it's really expensive in Singapore,
Is
but
it?
yeah.
What have you seen recently?
This Korean band. So they because it was
BTS.
no, not that. It's called Hyogo. So the thing is, I watched them at a live house, and it was so
Yeah.
much cheaper. But in Singapore, they went to Esplanade, which is like this fancy theater. They do all press there. That's why it was so expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, why did I even pay
Yeah,
to go there?
Why
right?
did you go? Why don't you just listen to them on Spotify? Why don't you just watch them on...
Exactly.
What was it about going?
The fact that you're closer to them and
Yeah.
that they are playing right in front of you, and it's different from whatever that's recorded in studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How?
Sometimes they will do a different version, and that's why they even sell this live edition. Live edition, because sometimes they just jam on the spot.
Yeah.
And that's something that isn't captured in the YouTube or like the studio sessions, which are obviously more produced and they sound better. But there's something about live, right? They're connecting with you, and then they're talking to the audience. You have all these other fans around you, and you're in this experience together.
I feel like about live, it's like live football or live
Yeah.
any live event, right? That the real beauty of that is you don't know what's going to happen.
Oh
And it
yeah,
could all go
absolutely.
horribly wrong. I don't like watching a replay of a game in
Because
football, for example. You know the result. If you know the result,
I think especially for football, because to be honest, football is quite boring. Like most of
Yeah.
the time, there's not much action going on.
agree.
Like let's be, it's true, you know. But it's like a space, right? There's something going on,
Yeah.
and then you're with your mates. You can be drinking, you can be talking, and then when they're near the goal, you're like, oh yeah, this is happening. Yeah. So that's why watching a replay is not as exciting.
Yeah. No, you certainly wouldn't. Like, it's that live event that's created, and that's what creates the
Mm.
human
Mm.
experience.
And even with things that we think are like absolutely online, like if you think about esports,
Yeah.
but they have this huge offline, like the finals, they're a huge thing. Obviously, a lot of people tune in through live streaming, but they still happen at an arena, you know, like they sell tickets for all the audience watching live.
It's
And then
amazing esports. Andy, who was in the studio here,
hmm
is big into esports, and I didn't believe that esports.
it's going to take off.
Well, no. I didn't believe that esports events were going to be a thing. I didn't believe it in the sense that I looked at it and thought that ain't going to work. I just didn't know it was possible. So when he started talking to me about esports and these big sort of arenas for
Yeah.
esports where people are like cheering,
Oh yeah.
Like-
oh yeah.
he just shot him in the head like that. And I thought, wow, it's like people actually watching that. And I've seen it on Twitch, so I get it. And I watched my son watch Twitch, and I watched my son watch Minecraft gameplay, and I
Yeah.
get it. But arenas, and then these competitions of people coming together, because you would have thought gameplay, like it would all online. Kids are growing up, and they're digital natives, and they're all growing up online, and they don't like contact. That's rubbish. Because whenever I see my son, who's 13, play, he plays online, like just like we all use online. But the way they really like playing, two mates next to each other, sitting next to each other at the computer, like in the same room, playing an online game. How
Or
about that?
if they can't be in the same room, they call. You know,
Yeah.
you're talking to someone. You're talking to those people that you're playing
They
with.
love that. Discord. They got like Discord channels.
Yeah,
Have
yeah,
you
yeah,
used
yeah.
Discord? Like this.
I know it's a gaming thing. I haven't used it, but
Yeah, where did this thing come from? It's like Skype for gamers, right?
yeah, yeah. They need to communicate. You know, it's like strategy. They talk a lot about
They
strategy
love
in
it.
the games.
It's cool. Whilst we're on the tip about human touch, let's talk about Henna Hotel.
Oh yes, yes.
Because
Okay.
we've heard all these stories about you've seen it, and like whenever people talk about robots replacing human beings, one of the stories they dig out is that hotel in Japan where you walk in and you get the robot concierge. This thing goes,
Yeah.
beep, 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 beep. I'll take you to your room,
Yeah.
and it takes you, and it's like it's a novelty, and so it's great. It's Instagram friendly. You share it. However, what's going on?
However, so at the concierge, you have all these robots, and there are like two dinosaurs and one that looks like a human being. So
Wait a minute. Hang on. There's a lot of why is there a dinosaur that looks like a human being?
novelty. No. Two dinosaurs and one human robot.
Ah, yeah.
They're not the same thing.
There's like a Doraemon type thing.
No. You can either choose to talk to the dinosaurs, you can talk to the human robots, but they
Gotcha.
are robots. And they're supposed to look fun and cool. I mean, it's almost like a wax museum, right?
Right.
Fine. You just see these things. And another aspect of this hotel is that they have this robot assistants in your room. So you can use voice command to tell the assistant to do certain things. But what happened was that, people snore, and then at night they're sleeping and they're snoring, and then the robots thought that was a voice command, and the robot wakes up and be like, do you need help, something? And these people are like, dude, I just want to
That's
sleep.
creepy.
Yeah.
You don't even know, right?
Yeah,
You might
and-
be talking in your sleep, right?
Oh my god, yeah. Can you imagine if it talks? Yeah, I don't think you want that to happen. So it ends up that the group that made the hotel, they were thinking, okay, so they were like, next year is going to be Olympics. There's not enough rooms. There are not enough people manning the rooms. Let's make a hotel where robots can do the job. But it turns out that half the time the people are complaining about the robots, which
Oh.
means a human has to step in and resolve the matter. Yeah, because if you ask another robot to go and like risk manage, and it's never
Yeah.
ending. Yeah,
Yeah.
so in the end, the human stuff
A robot steps in,
to another
so makes it
robot.
worse. Fires it.
Yeah,
Fires the robot.
robot fires another robot. Oh my god! But yeah, the human
So th-
being has
so
to
what
step
happened?
in.
So they got rid of them.
They got rid of half of the robots,
Right.
and in fact, one of the robots, the only job it had to do was to carry the luggage.
Yeah.
That turned out to be too much work for it.
Too much work.
Yeah.
Did it go on strike?
Well, I don't think they know, but they can just die, you know, like they run out of battery, break down, don't know what's happening. Like all these
Oh, it's a
things
great
can
story.
happen.
So, like in any organization, you're going to have like different tasks, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have the tasks which are the heavy lifting. So there might be, for example, the robot that does the laundry, right?
Yeah,
Or the
yeah.
robot that takes your dry cleaning and does that.
Yeah, the robot that does the laundry is called the washing machine.
Yeah, right. There you go. We've got one already. But it doesn't have a cute face, right? It doesn't talk to you, right? The other part where robots cannot replace humans is the human contact, right?
Yep.
Which is, so, you know, in the same way, like if you're a startup founder and you're running an organization, what you don't want to do is you don't want to outsource your human contact,
Yep.
which is a big mistake. You want to automate to elevate, which is you want to automate all the work, which could be the laundry. Okay, you want to automate the laundry because that's boring, right? That's not what we signed up for. That's the spreadsheet stuff. We automate all that stuff so we can free up the time. I'm not doing your laundry. I'm asking you, is everything okay? Right? I'm having a look. Oh, right. I see you just checked in. You're flying out tomorrow. Everything all right? That's a human that needs to do that. Because it's a human being, we know they care about us rather than just sort of a recorded message. That's the bit. Like in a business, if you're a startup founder, or anybody knows this in sales, is you cannot outsource that part of your business. And if you do, people hate it. People hate that automated. If you get that sort of dear curly brackets first name, where somebody like screws up an email that they send to you, or they get, you know, people like go ballistic, even though they can just delete the email. They hate it.
That's like a bad experience right there, and remember it for the bad experience.
You're treating me like a spreadsheet box, and I'm not. I'm more than just a number, and you're being treated like that. Therefore, that's the bit that we cannot outsource. And it gives us a good indication, this is what we need to do. This is the future. Automate the work. Elevate the flow.
Absolutely. We'll be surprised the workplace isn't evolving as fast as we thought it would. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You
And
got any examples of that?
let me read out what Stanford professor of economics Paul Over says about work. So he said, I thought the gig economy would take over, but it hasn't. And I thought that by now people will find their ideal mates and jobs online, but that was wrong too.
Why? Do we have too high expectations for this?
I think we do. It's just when
we read it wrong.
Yeah, a lot of times it's like the music thing, right? That maybe the medium or the format changed, but the intrinsic quality of like, you know, what was good about music hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true that with online it's easier to find people, but whether they're the right people or not, that's still it's not gonna just get miraculously easier because of that, and it's not going to be like a much higher rate of matching,
right?
Yeah.
Well, the matching might be easier, but then at the same time you can only match with one person in theory, right?
Yeah, you
like
can.
The ultimate match.
Yeah, it's like Tinder. You can match with like 100 people, but how many people you actually go out on a date with, and how many people actually end up, you know, being a partner?
It's gonna be the same, right? You're gonna get married to one person, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, unless we can like change the logic in that. All right, so we're coming to a conclusion. This has been Asia Tech Podcast live on Thursday, lunchtime here in Singapore. We're broadcasting live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter, Periscope, and Twitch. If you've joined us on any of those, then thank you very much for joining in the live session, everybody. Hopefully you've had a bit of fun. I mean, we'll read out some of the last comments before we sign off, but I guess, you know, it is like music. I mean, let's come back to music, because music doesn't make sense, right? In the digital world, it doesn't make sense. Why do we have music? What is its purpose, right? It's been around actually for thousands of years. You know, we've been banging like bricks and rocks, whatever it is that we've been jumping around, tribal days. It's been around. I mean, the beats that we've had, probably not too dissimilar from the beats we have today, right? They're a bit more advanced, but you know, if you even go back to like Africa and like West Africa and Mali and listen to like Mali blues, which is from hundreds of years ago, it's very similar to like the rhythms and the chords of rock and roll today, right?
Mm.
So the music's been around, it's part of our soul. And yet, what do we like talk about when we write music? You know, a lot of it's love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the most successful songs of all times, like, you know, like She Loves You, She Loves Me. I can't remember which one it's by the Beatles. Like, it's all about love. And here's the thing, is that, you know, a robot can write that. But the reason why we connect with music is we connect with the artists behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And we connect with them and the human beings behind it. And we know, for example, like, if you look at the like love songs or any kind of song, and this gives us an instance of what it means to be human, I suppose, is that there's always loss, right? That if you look at the songs, like it's not just like I love this woman and that's it. Like if you look at any kind of song, there's always like love and loss, right? Together. There's always like she loves me, but she thinks I'm a jerk, or like, you know, I made a fool of myself, or I've been hurt, or it's in every single love song, right?
Yeah. It's like if you don't have these emotions, how do you write the songs? Because you don't have the stories and you don't go through the emotions.
Yeah. So what sort of position are you writing that song from, right? You haven't experienced loss.
Yep.
A robot will never love somebody and lose them, right? Not yet. Maybe in the future. I'll put it out there. Maybe that could be possible. You know, that for robots to be better at human beings than human beings are, robots are going to have to be better at making mistakes. How's that possible?
That's contradictory, right? Because you don't want them to make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. We'll leave that with everybody as a thought summarizing today. Any more comments just before we sign off?
Yeah, just one last comment from Jeremiah Su. Jeremiah says, agree on that AI cannot take away the human aspect of being human.
Yeah.
Smiley face. Nice one, Graham.
Isn't it funny we still put smiley faces in digital communication?
Yeah, okay, that's like a whole other topic about emojis and you know, all these images and what is their function in our communication.
Yeah, because they're written by machine. I mean, Jeremiah's not a machine, but he's used a machine to write it, right? You didn't use smiley faces when can you imagine when you used to write with your hand, like the quill? You put a smiley face on it. But you didn't, because it was written by a human with very, you know, I suppose, human qualities of making mistakes and stuff like that. There you go. All right, this has been Asia Tech Podcast. Myself, Graham Brown, joined by my colleague.
I'm Yijing.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on the live feed today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please share a like with us. If you're on LinkedIn, please like and comment what you thought about the feed. We'd love to hear some feedback. If you are watching on YouTube, the same. Please like us, thumbs up, everybody, because we are human and therefore we are vulnerable and we require some kind of social validation. We're not machines here, folks. We're not machines just grinding away numbers and content.
We care if you like it.
We need love, just like everybody else. We're frail and vulnerable. If you're a fan of Asia Tech Podcast, please follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud. You can find us all at atp.show. We'll be back every Thursday for more stories. What are we talking about next week, Yijing? Do we have a heads up on our stories for next week? So we're going deep into the mind.
The neuropsychology of storytelling.
How about that? Neuropsychology. If you're into the nuts and bolts of the grey matter, that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about neuropsychology of storytelling. I guess we're going to talk about AI and machines as well in Asia. So we're going to go deep next week. Hopefully you'll join us on that journey. Graham Brown signing out. Thanks a lot, everybody.